examine the invasion, where we discuss the occupation, where we give voice to the conquered. Blue and Black Attack presents Rise of the
Welcome. This is the Invaders Spotlight. I am your host, DEEZE Skills. We got snakes, heavy takes, and even heavier music for you tonight on Invaders Spotlight. I'd like to welcome in the star-studded panel. First of all, Panther Pickle. How are you, my friend? Are you excited about this show for Invaders?
I am. You know what? You build and you fail in the trenches. If you build in the trenches, you keep your team strong in the trenches, you'll generally have success. If you get cheap and you don't build through the trenches, or you get rid of a key piece in the trenches, you're bound and determined to flood the trenches, cause a leak, and fail.
That's absolutely right. 100% correct. Dan Morgan shocked us all on draft night. On night 1 and night 2, he went defensive tackle night 2 and offensive tackle night 1. Trench warfare here on Invaders. Cole, I'm glad to have you here. I'm excited to have you here. I hope you're excited about this opportunity to talk about Dan Morgan and his first 2 picks of the 2026 NFL Draft.
Hey, buddy. Yes, I am excited about this one. It's something that's very important. People kind of push it to the side, and sometimes it's not as sexy as everybody wants it to be, but you could have the best quarterback, the best running back, the best wide receivers, the best anything you want on offense. If your trenches is not right, Deez, you will not win the football game if you have terrible offensive line play. This is a very important episode, sir.
Yes, sir. How many times did we see that with Cam Newton where we didn't have the offensive line? Cam had to make all the plays. And even now, we see people, Panther Pickle, second guessing Dan Morgan on that round 1 pick of Monroe Freeling, the guy that we targeted very first mock draft to bring into Carolina to fortify that tackle position. How important do you see that pick? And do you see him starting sometime this year? I know that's a loaded question and a hornet's nest itself, but we're talking about trench warfare here by Dan Morgan, bolstering that offensive line. Did you like the pick, just the start of that?
I did. I personally would have went to safety, but I understand why he went tackle, and I can't. When you look at the out term of next year and the year after's situation, and you look at the situation now, you appreciate that he got a left tackle of that caliber was there and available. Does he start? You're right. That is a loaded question. I'm going to throw a question back. If you have to start a rookie at center, are you sure you want to put 2 rookie offensive linemen on one team with Bryce Young and a very young team?
It's a tough question to answer. You know, the only person that knows the answer is going to be Dave Canales and the other coaches on the Panthers after they look at these guys in camp and have to make the decision. Cole, let me get you back in here on Monroe Freeling. So I know it was surprising for a lot of Panthers fans that we went tackle, but honestly, it was a great pick. And we got Rasheed Walker, okay? And Icky might be coming back at some point, but we don't know when. And we heard from Taylor Moton this week. He's charged and ready to go this year for the Panthers. Do you think Monroe Freeling makes an immediate impact on this offensive line, or is he a guy that Dan drafted just to kind of develop behind Timo and some of the others?
I think he is going to make a difference. If he doesn't take somebody's job, unfortunately, we've seen how things gone with our offensive line lately. He's probably going to be thrust into action due to injury. I think he can be a good player right now. He can hold it together. I think it might be a long shot, but it's not as crazy and radical to me, Deez, that thinking we could start 2 rookies on the offensive line, especially with the seasoned as the center is. I know Freeland maybe doesn't have as many snaps, as many years under his belt, but I think the center can handle it. and with just the specs of our new offensive tackle, with how big and strong he is, and he's only going to get bigger and stronger. If you do have to put him out there early, I think you can see a difference definitely at the end of the first season, and he can be formidable going into year two. And one more thing I would like to say, I think even if Icky did not have his injury, I still would contemplate doing the exact same thing we did just for longevity. And then with Moten getting older, you just never know what's going to happen with that. So it was a great pick all the way around. I'm happy with it.
Right, and this is the mess that we just can't unravel right now, Pickle. What the future is for Kim Ekwonu, and if we don't know the future of him at left tackle, then it's really hard to guess what direction we're going with Monroe Freeling. It seems like to me he was one of the better left tackle prospects in the entire draft. I mean, is the writing on the wall for Kim, or does he still have hope here with the Panthers?
No, I think the writing's on the wall. I think he needs to work himself to come back this year so he can prove to the rest of the NFL that he can play and he's healthy enough to play. Is his future aligned with left tackle? I don't think so. I don't know that, but I don't think so. I think he'll find himself somewhere else on a different team next year, and I think the writing's on the wall already.
It certainly does seem that way, and nobody wants to say that for a hometown guy in a Kim Ekwonu. All right, Panther Pickle, let's talk about this second-round draft pick. Let's talk about Lee Hunter that we brought in some trench warfare in the second round. We brought in a defensive tackle with our second-round pick. I didn't have that on my bingo card. That was something we had discussed a little bit in the INVADERS episode. Actually, we made a whole episode about it. It wasn't a super long one, but we had talked about it in detail, the loss of Ashawn Robinson. Bringing in Lee Hunter, is that the same thing as a guy like Ashawn Robinson? Is he going to be able to fill that void?
I think so. I really think he can. Now, I ain't gonna lie, I didn't know a lot about Lee Hunter. Dan, to my little knowledge on our draft, when we had that pick, he traded up a couple spots. I'm thinking, you go get that linebacker, Dan. You get that linebacker. And he went D-tackle Lee Hunter, and I went, who? I don't recall that linebacker. and he did get us good. And then I'm like, okay, all right, national media, I heard you. Sit back and shut up. So, and I had to dig up. But after I dug up and after I realized who he was and I watched some tape and I really studied on him a day or so, I realized, oh yeah, okay, this guy can do a lot more than he's being advertised he can do. And one needs to remember, when Ashawn came here, he had been in the league for like 6 or 7 years, and he had 1 sack in all the years. When he was here, he broke a lot of his own personal records of sacks, and he became not only a run blocker but a pass blocker. And when Ashawn came here, he was 230 or he was 330 pounds, but he never lined up at nose. So I don't see why we can't teach a rookie who's already good at run blocking and with pressure sacks. I don't understand why he can't become a force in the rush game.
No, I agree.
Think he stepped right into Ashawn's spots.
Yeah, and our coaching staff was the coaching staff that coached up Ashawn Robinson to get him to his career best. Who's to say that we can't get Lee Hunter on his best path as well? Cole, I know you were looking at some Lee Hunter tape today. Give me your initial thoughts maybe of the draft pick, which I know probably weren't that great, and then give me your thoughts now and how you feel about Lee Hunter as an addition to this team in the second round.
Just to keep it honest, we only talked about him one time. I remember bringing him up late in the process as one of our later mock drafts that was an option. But, I mean, if you really truly break it down and think about it, God forbid something happens to Derek Brown again. That's the last thing we need. But imagine the size hole we would have if we don't have a defensive tackle outside of Bobby Brown that you could potentially trust. You need Hunter out there. So it was a good pick. I was more happy about it after I settled down and consumed it and thought about it like everybody else did. I think it could be very formidable beside Derek Brown. And then with our edge rushers, I really don't see who's going to be able to get double teamed outside of Derek Brown. You're going to pick the poison. So hopefully it'll be a formidable duo, my friend.
Yeah, Dan caught me off guard with both picks, to be honest. Well, not the tackle pick so much. I was okay with picking a tackle. Like, it made a lot of sense. You're there at 19, one of them drops, you grab them. The second round defensive tackle, I didn't think it was that high of a need. And then, Pickle, you told us Monday, you went back, you looked at it. They said defensive tackle was our number 2 need overall. So adding a guy like Lee Hunter in that respect makes a lot of sense. I hate that we were just a little bit off the mark and we were looking at some other positions on defense, because Dan Morgan really did cook again in this draft, in my opinion.
Right.
And a lot of the other top leading pundits and guys that cover the draft agree with this, Panther Pickle. Would you talk about how they kind of rated Dan Morgan last year and this year with the draft picks or the drafts that he had?
Yeah, they rated the draft picks last year. They rated him as a A+. This year he got another A+. And shout out to all the fans. Fans always look at the roster and we make up our own needs, and we often get caught up in those makeups, and we convince other folks that we have our own needs. And Dan is the calmest guy in the room because he knows what his needs are. And his needs are the only needs that count. So, but a lot of the national pundits before the draft had us going offensive line or defensive line, and we just didn't want to see it. But reality is they were right. But as far as grading, I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. I believe Dan Morgan is the best GM the Carolina Panthers have ever had in their history. I know. I've seen them all. I remember Bill Polian getting basically walked out of the building because he told Jerry Richardson, I'm the GM, let me do everything. Jerry was like, no, I'm not. I don't want you to do everything. I'm owner. So Richardson said, fine, I'll go to the Colts. And he left. And that was in 1998. And somebody else took over who was trash. And it pretty much stayed trash until 03, or it was right before 03 when anyway, Marty Herney took over. I don't remember the exact date, but Marty Herney took over as GM. And Marty was great with the first round, and the rest, we went to the Super Bowl in 03, and then the rest is history. But to my opinion, and I challenge anybody that's watched the team as long as I have, tell me another GM that's better than Dan Morgan.
We want to see those in the comments. Make sure you let us know. If you think there's a GM that was ahead before Dan Morgan that was better as a Panthers GM, let us know in the comments what you think. Cole, you're going to love this last question. Let me ask you this. Okay. With this trench warfare that Dan Morgan executed in the first and second round of the 2026 NFL Draft, do you feel like the Carolina Panthers of old are starting to come back, like that 2003 team that Dan Morgan was on when we went to the Super Bowl? Are you starting to feel like maybe the investment in the offensive line is going to help the Panthers run the football a little more? And do you feel like the investment on the defensive line is going to make us return to defensive lines that have been dominant in the past for the Carolina Panthers? Doesn't it feel like old school Panthers football is returning to Charlotte?
Each and every one of those questions you just posed to me, sir, I'm going to answer absolutely. It does. I see the vision. We've seen the vision before. We know what works best for us, despite the league may change. If you run the ball and you play really good defense, you will always win this league, and you will always be able to win in any type of terrain, especially late in the year if it gets in playoffs and bad weather and all that good stuff. I'm very excited about what we're doing. We have physical players. We drafted people with an edge, with people with personalities. And we all like those players that might have a screw or two loose, that mixed with the size of some of these gargantuans that we have coming to Charlotte next year. I think we got something special going. Who has back-to-back drafts, especially in Panthers history, where a lot of the media is giving A-pluses out. I couldn't be more ecstatic about that, DEEZE. I think we did a great job.
When you draft a defensive tackle, nicknamed the Fridge in the second round, you know you've done something right. I'll just leave it at that. I do want to thank everyone that participated in our community spotlight on Wednesday. Make sure you check out our community post. and leave your comment on there, so that way you can join the chat spotlight here, and we're going to outline the winner of our chat spotlight name.
Hey y'all, welcome back to my favorite segment, the Chat Spotlight. This week on our community post we asked, who do you think will get the start first? Monroe, Freeling, or Lee Hunter? Listen y'all, I think it will be Lee Hunter. With the loss of Robinson, there was a hole in the Panthers roster. Hunter fills this need and will crack the starting lineup quickly. I'd like to give a quick shout out to one of our most loyal members, Panther Gal. She left a comment on our community post, and now she's in the spotlight. Panther Gal simply wanted a picture of Pickle riding a panther. Well, Panther Gal, ask and ye shall receive. I hope you enjoy this awesome image of Pickle, and I hope everyone leaves us a comment on this video. Thank you all for helping with our community post for INVADERS Spotlight. Take it easy, y'all, and always keep pounding. Go Panthers!
All right, guys, thank you so much. This has been another fantastic episode of INVADERS Spotlight. Right here, DEEZE Skills, Panther Pickle, and Cole. Be looking out for the Cole Show on Thursday and Panther Pickles every Monday. Join us on the charge here at the Blue and Black Attack.
The spotlight finds you every time.
Kingdom stolen, like a thief in the night. Our palace left broken. This pain we now harness. Skulls and dragons' blood, fangs of greed run deep. Purify